So today we're going to talk about Google Analytics 4. And in session 1 of this year, we kind of introduced, I think, to like the UI and some very basic stuff. So this is very much going to be like a 102 level. We're not going to go over a lot of the basics. I will very briefly recap, but all of you, I think, have been in Google Analytics 4. And if you haven't been, then you might be a little bit lost for some of this. But the goal is that you kind of get up to speed on some of the more advanced data capabilities of Google Analytics 4. So David and I actually just delivered this training to a whole bunch of people for Winding River. And so I'm pretty much going to replicate what we did in that training because it was pretty well organized and there's lots of kind of additional resources that we can go through. So I'm going to spend literally less than 5 minutes talking you through the UI, and then we'll get into some of the more advanced capabilities. I almost just ended the meeting. Here we go. Share. Okay. So if you remember, Google Analytics 4, it's synced up to your website in a very similar way. The UI essentially changed in that the default, reports that you see here are different. The notable change that we probably all recognize immediately is that bounce rate is not something that we see very up front and center, whereas bounce rate in Google Analytics was a really prominent data point. You've got your home screen just like you normally would. You've got reports. These are custom. So when you go to set up a Google Analytics 4 account, I actually learned this last night. I didn't know this, but the business objectives is not a default setting, but you can set it up and then basically set up the key data dimensions that you want to associate with that dashboard. So you can kind of like set up these like custom visualizations here. And then one of the things that I'll just quickly mention, and we'll go into it a little more detail in a second, is that like you have a library here and you've got a whole bunch of collections and reports that are kind of auto-generated in the library, but you can also create custom reports. And this is where Megan has had to go in for our clients and create reports that show bounce rate because everybody wants to see it because they're used to seeing it. And it's not easily available in the UI, which is frustrating to a lot of people. Another place to go in and you can kind of set up custom data visualizations is in explorations. So we've been able to kind of go in and figure out like what is the path that people are taking, right? And you can kind of set up this multi-dimensional data and you can get pretty granular. So if you wanted, you could conceivably go in and set up some data streams that would show you like, here's the page most people start on. And if they start on this page, here's the second page they're most likely to go to, right? Like you're able to kind of set up some of that journey mapping, which obviously can be useful. And then in advertising, so you're able to sync this to a lot more with a lot more sophistication over to Google Ads. We don't have Google Ads running because God help us, we do not want to win more business at this time. Okay, this is where we're going to start. So I want to show you this not because you'll necessarily set it up yourself, but because you'll probably either be asked to set it up for clients or at some point be asked to collect data that is here. Okay. And so that's kind of where we're going to start today. So if you have, I want this to be kind of interactive. So if you have access to a Google Analytics 4 account, I would ask you to just go ahead and pull it up on your screen so that you could look at the back end and click through different things. So if you want to be like side by side with me and compare what you see to what I see, feel free to do that. And we can kind of all look together. I'll give you a second to do that while I pull up the presentation. I'm not going to give you a lot of prelims here. All right. So what I want to talk to you guys about, and I'm not going to, like I said, start really granular, but we're kind of going to go into is a little bit of account setup. So Megan put together this really fantastic resource for us that she basically, it's like a setup guide, and you're not going to find this anywhere on the internet. Like she was able to pull from like a lot of very different sources and resources and use her practical knowledge to decide like these are the things that a business actually needs to set up on GA4, which I'm very grateful. There is a higher writer version of this because technically we own it, but I don't know where it is. So first is obviously setting up Google Signals. So anytime you're going to want, like if a client asks like, do we have this set up? Do we have that set up? You're just going to go into the admin with the gear icon and go into property settings. Property settings are pretty much where you're going to live. Obviously, you need to make sure that your account matches the property. So Google Analytics 4 is a property that has an identity. So look at these numbers. Why does this matter? It matters because when you go to set up Google Tag Manager, which we'll talk about in just a second, you need that number. Okay, so that's where it is. The setup assistant is going to walk you through like all the basic stuff, but basically what we're going to make sure is the like 2 to 3 places we're going to focus most on are data streams, events, and conversions. But a couple things just to look out for. So if you have set this up yourself, or if you've set this up for a client, there's just a couple of quirky things. So in data settings, the retention setting for data in Google Analytics defaults to 2 months. And you need to make sure that's set to 14 months, because otherwise all your data is going to be expired. Like, so you got to make sure that that's like set up very quickly. And that's, you know, set up to keep. And then with data collection, you just have to make sure that you opt in to set up granular location and device data collection. Okay. So there's just a couple of like little settings there that you just have to make sure are accurate before you kind of go on. So you'll have this to access. We're not going to go through the whole thing, but basically it's going to set up, as long as you set it up the right way and all of your reporting signals are correct, then everything that I show you from here on out as we go in, we're going to do 3 exercises together, or 2 now. It should be correct and should match mine. And if something doesn't match, you need to go back to this settings document and figure out if something is set up differently than how I'm showing you. Okay. All right. So big picture stuff that's changed with Google Analytics 4 that we have found the most use out of. The first is events. So, you know, I literally just got off a call with Jenna from Aslan, and she was talking about how like they're trying to prove the ROI of SEO. How do you prove the return on investment for search engine optimization, for all the blogs they've bought, right? For all the strategy they've paid for. You know, you prove it usually by attribution modeling, by figuring out how you can track traffic acquisition, which we know is a Google Analytics data point, and then map, if we know people came in through this traffic channel and they ended up here, they filled out this form, now they're in our CRM, we know they came from organic search, and we know they bought our product. Any revenue generated from that lead would be reasonably attributable to organic search. That's the data circle, right? So that's the data circle that you set up when you do attribution modeling. One of the ways that Google Analytics does it is through events, okay? So in Universal Analytics, they would talk about you got this many hits on your website. Google Analytics 4 went deeper and basically said, like, it's not just a page view. There are a lot of behavioral metrics that indicate a level of interest, that indicate whether or not somebody is truly engaged with content. These are all customizable. So I'm going to walk you through, basically, there's 2 ways to skin the cat. The easiest way to do it is through Google Tag Manager. So how familiar are you guys with Google Tag Manager? 0, not familiar. Okay. Poor face. Okay. So what you're going to do is you're going to go in. She's like, I'm a press specialist. So I appreciate your commitment to the cause and to the team. So what you're going to do in Google Tag Manager is another Google thing, just like Analytics or Search Console or anything like that. You literally Google it, go to Google Tag Manager. You have to set up code on the header and the footer of a website. So you have to go install that code snippet on the website. And then what it'll do is it'll create a workspace for you that's pulling from your sitemap. Okay, so that's what I've done here. So I have a Google Tag Manager account for HireAWriter, and then I have a container that is our website, www.hirewriter.us. Notice that has an identity. Okay. And so what I did is I took and I connected that, and then in Google Events. So when you go into, do I need to slow down? No. Okay.
I don't think I've ever typed this fast before, but please continue.
Sorry. Okay. So I preset this up for us. Like, it's like when people, you know, when you're watching a cooking show and they like pull out the roast and it's already done. Like, I did that here. So this is like 75% cooked. I'm just going to show you the like finished product. Because I thought it would be tedious for us to walk through all the pieces. But basically you go in, you set up a property, you install the code on your website, you go back to Google Tag Manager. Once that workspace is set up, you're able to go in and set tags and triggers. Okay. So a tag is something that's going to integrate with Google Analytics events. Okay. A tag in Google Tag Manager is a data point that associates with Google Analytics 4 events. Events are a way that you can track user behavior and implement attribution modeling on a website. Should I say it one more time? Okay. So I tried to talk slow. So, and that's not because, okay, that was insulting. So basically what you're going to do is you're going to go in and once you have Google Tag Manager set up, you'll be able to create tags. And those tags have an ID. And then you're going to figure out what the triggers are for that. Okay. So for instance, if you want to set up a tag that says, I want to know if somebody goes and views our business blog. So what I did is I set up a tag that was just a regular Google tag, right? And then I set up the trigger of that tag being page views for our business blog. Okay. So then I'm going to submit and I'm going to publish and create it. I'm going to do the business blog. And I'm going to publish it. Okay. There are a lot more complexities that you could add to this. I'm not going to do that right now because you don't need to know. But basically what I did is I added the URL of that blog. That's all I did. I just added the URL of that blog to the trigger, associated it with the tag, and set it up like that. Okay. So that is pretty much how you set up in Google Tag Manager, and you figure out all of the things that you want to, be associated with that. When you are then back in Google Analytics. So does anybody have any questions about that? Okay, so you set up all the things and it's just going to manage all of the tags that you have set up on your website, all of the different things that you're flagging, that you're marking. So for us, because of the way our business model is set up, allegedly, we've got all these blogs. We have different audiences for all these blogs. The people who are likely to buy from us now are reading our business blog or our SEO blog. I know that, right? The people who are likely to buy from us in the future are writers who are reading the 3 other blogs, writers or social media managers who are reading all the other categories. So for me, I know that I could set up a business objective that I convert a certain amount of the traffic. I convert to a form fill a certain amount of the traffic that comes in through the business or the SEO blog. I can make that educated assumption. So what I could do is set up in Tag Manager a tag for the business blog, views, and then I'm going to use and pull that data over into the data that I have in Google Analytics. Okay. So I already have a bunch of events set up. So let me go back to the beginning so you see how I got here. So I came in here. I'm on my main Google Analytics page. I go into admin. I go into properties. Okay. So that's where all this is. And I go into events. So you can see that there's a lot of custom events that are already created. It was pointed out to me when I did this training that these aren't all actually, not custom events. They're automatically there, like they're default events. It was pointed out to me that these aren't actually all the defaults, which probably means that Megan did some of this for us. I didn't know it. So she did this for us, but so some of these may be custom is my point. If you're looking at a Google Analytics 4 account next to me right now, some of these might not be accurate. So the things that we recognize in this that we would need to look at in order to see the value of these events, what do I need to always look for first whenever I'm looking at data in one of these platforms? Data is nothing without a date. Okay, data is nothing without a date. So the date range is where we always expect it to be on any Google thing, top right. If they ever change that, that's when they're really going to find they have a problem with people. So we can go in and we can set the default date range, and then we have a custom comparison so that we can see month over month. I'm not sure if that's accurate. I don't have the brain power to look at it right now. But basically what we would do is click, we have form start, form submit, page view, scroll, session start, things like that. So what we could do is we could go create an event. Well, first, hold on. First, what we might want to do is consider form submit to be a conversion metric, right? In our world, that's an MQL. That's a marketing qualified lead. If they submit a form on our website, they're probably a marketing qualified lead. Now, we have a problem because we also accept writer applications on our website. So what I would need to do to make this data accurate is I would need to go modify that event to exclude form fills on the SEO blog writer, whatever it is, URL. So I could easily do that. I'm not gonna do it right now. Okay. So always gut check your data, because it's easy to look at that and be like, oh yeah, form submits an MQL. But if we had 10 people apply to write for us, probably more like 25 this month, then I would need to make sure that's excluded, because that's giving me a false sense of success. Or it's giving me a false sense of failure, because I'm saying I only closed 3 deals this month. And if I had 686 form submissions and I closed 3 deals, my close rate sucks. So that may not be accurate, right? So always question your data, make sure you know how it looks and why. Okay, so that may or may not be what you see as default. What you can do is go in and create custom events. So you just go literally create. You could do, we could say like business blog or something. I might need an underscore. Yeah. Okay. And then you do the event name equals and do a value. Okay. So the conditions that you can add multiple conditions. Okay. So you could say like page view. So if the page title equals, and then put in a value here, which would be like, I don't actually, I think it's called business blog, but I'm not totally sure. And then you would be able to go in and basically say, if that's the condition I want, that they view the page title equaling business blog, then you could go into and create the event. Sorry, I shouldn't have done that extra one. Okay. And that's going to put it there. And then that's going to be a custom event I have set up. Now, obviously, I didn't sync it, because that's the one part of the turkey I didn't get 75% of the way done. But what you can do then is pull, when I've got my tag manager and my Google Analytics working reciprocally, it'll come there. And then you can go in and figure out where your, and look at your custom events and tie them to a tag that you created in Google Tag Manager. Sorry, this should be coming up now. It's just not reloading. If you have questions about that, Google has a really nice, like very simple, like 15-minute video that walks you through that. It's here. Yeah, here. That walks you through it. It's less than 10 minutes, step by step. And you can see all of the things that I just did. So you create your triggers in there, and then you go into events and parameters in your Google Analytics dashboard. Okay. And then you can kind of see what you added as event parameters. Any kind of questions about that or setting that up? I'm sorry, it's not loading. It should be coming up here. It's not wanting to pull it. Any questions about any of that?
Do you tend to pay more attention to the number of users who complete an event or the count of the event? Because there's some pretty big differences there between count and users.
Yes, that's a very good question. So it depends. So I would say that we definitely get traffic from, so like clicks, page views, things like that from my friends and family. No, probably not family, but my friends. So I would be more inclined to look at users. On an e-com site where people are making fast decisions and buying some kind of consumer packaged good, count may be a much more meaningful statistic. For me, it would be very much conflated. So I wouldn't take count as much into account. So I think the business model matters.
Sure.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Could you also use that for to determine how effective your call to actions are?
I didn't even know you were here. What did you say?
I said, could you use that to determine how effective the call to actions or the form fields are? So if you have drop off,
Yep,
your form fields may be too long or require too much information.
exactly. So if there's a huge difference between form start and form submit, right? Then again, you solve that problem differently depending on the business model. If I'm an e-com company, I'm going to change my abandoned cart token and message. If I'm us, I'm going to say, does the button not make sense? Is the website glitching? Did Joy break something again? Like, I'm going to troubleshoot that a little differently. But yeah, absolutely. The relationship between these data points is what you as an analyst have to look at and make sense of. The other thing that's important, so like for me, form submit is the conversion point that probably is the only one that really matters to me, but you can set different conversion events based on what you want to measure in your system. And so if you notice, I just kind of set that up as blank, where you need to go in and work on all these things behind the scenes. So if you notice, like I'm just setting up blank properties. It's not pulling data, because what you need to do is go in and set up all your data. So either that data needs to be set up in, right? So like that event I just set up is a nothing burger. I didn't tie any real data to it because I was just showing you how to set it up. But what you need to do is tie in. That's why I showed you Google Tag Manager first. You go in and set up all the data parameters you want there, and then you have a corresponding title, like nomenclature, to be able to bring over into. And that then there's a reciprocal communication between those two systems. You can also just set them up straight in here and have custom definitions. You can have custom data that you set up so that it's pulling. And then when you name something, it's real. Like it's really pulling something from your website. So for instance, you could go in and set these event parameters. You could go in and set different dimensions for your data and things like that. Okay. So if I knew that I've got 4 products, it's, you know, SEO, social media, press, and I don't remember what else we sell. Let's say 3 products. Then I would probably eventually, if my website was more product oriented, set up custom tracking for each of those 3 service lines. And that would be a little bit more complex because it's not just about them visiting that money page, that service page. It's about them visiting a blog maybe, and then clicking on a CTA that gets them to that service page. So I want to know not just where, and that's, I think, the big like takeaway from an attribution standpoint of Google Analytics 4 as a superior tool is that you don't just find out where they ended up. You found out where they started and where they went every step of the way. And that for marketers is valuable, because then you can say not just that they came in through an SEO blog, but that they came in through an SEO blog, they clicked 2 more things, and then they got to the contact page and filled out a form. It gives you a whole new way to evaluate how people are moving through your website and where you are most likely to find conversion points. Okay. Okay, so that's events. That's a kind of a big deal. You need to set up all your data wherever you want to, Google Tag Manager and Google Analytics itself, and then go in and use all that data to collect into events. So what I probably should have mentioned that maybe I didn't was just because we didn't go through the whole setup is you obviously have to make sure data is flowing. So Google Tag Manager, you set up the code, same thing, Google Analytics, you set up the code, but then in Google Analytics 4, you need to go a step further and set up your data stream. So in the back end where we've been this whole time, property management, you just go into add stream web, and then you add your URL. And then it's going to start pulling the data in. Okay. So that's in the setup thing that you'll see if you go through that. Okay. Any other questions about any of the basic setup parameters? Okay, so a couple things with events. They're now, yeah, that's everything. Engagement. So there's a huge amount of emphasis on engagement time. And I wanted to talk about this for a second because we're already getting this question from clients of like, where's bounce rate? Why am I not seeing bounce rate? All that. This is an important thing for you guys to be able to answer that question. Engagement time has become the preferred metric over bounce rate because anymore we are finding that website development is doing a lot of single page experiences. So when you go to a website, you can pretty much do everything you want to do on a single page. So think about what that would mean. A page already has a form on it. A page already has the information you need to buy something on it. It's a one-stop shop. That page is like a closed ecosystem. It has everything you need. Technically, if all you ever did was go to that very high quality comprehensive page, that would be a bounce because you've gone to one page and then you've left. That's what a bounce is. So it has proven itself to be an incomplete or insufficient metric for evaluating how people are actually engaging with a website, because a bounce could be measured even when somebody is very highly engaged and even when somebody converts. So it's not a good enough number anymore. And we found that. And so GA4 went into engagement time. So there are a lot more engagement metrics, including scroll time and things like that you saw, and you can evaluate those down to the URL level. So I'm going to walk you through that really quick because I think that it was a question that came up in the training that I did think was a really good one. Okay, so when you've set everything up correctly, you've got all your data streams, you've got your events set up, things like that. One of the things that GA4 has defaulted into showing you is views by page title. And what you can do when you click through to any of the metrics that are already on your report, now you can obviously customize these pages. So if you go in, let's just walk through that really quick. So like I'm in the pages and screens widget, I'm in customize, and I can take and change either the way I see this data, I can change the order of the data, I can change some of the dimensions, things like that. I can pretty much visualize this however I want to. This is atrocious, but it is what it is. Okay, so that's just FYI. Like you can go in and customize like the entire report page by doing what I just did. Okay. You can also go in and change the nature of these like individual reports. So if I go in and I edit, like, for instance, how I want things to compare. So I could compare all users to some of these custom dimensions. So if I wanted to say like, I only sell this product to English speakers, I could set up a custom dimension that has US, UK, Australia. And on this page, have a comparison based on that custom metric that shows me page views global or page views US, UK, Australia. There are many businesses that would very much care to see that comparison, right? So you can just break down the data into more dimensions if you want to see different things about it, okay? And then that's kind of gonna give you that, okay? When you do in the Explore feature, so remember when I talked to you about Explore and you can do a lot of different data visualization, you can go in and set on the Explore feature the events that you set up. So if you set up like, let's see, form submit, let's say I wanna know form submit. I would be able to then see the users in a segment that submitted a form. So think about what I just laid out. I could go into page views by page title. I could set a custom dimension where I only see English speakers or likely English speakers. And if I left something out in a horrible, offensive way, please forgive me. And then I said UK, not Europe, sorry. Okay, I lost my train of thought. I go into page titles. I set up customization, custom parameters based on regionality, based on possible English speakers. Then I could do form submissions. So I could say out of everybody who fit that criteria on this page, this percentage of them submitted a form. Okay. So think about the level of granularity I just achieved in like 3 clicks. And I could set that up to always be the case. I could set that up to always see that parameter. I could set it up to say repeat site visitors who go to this page who start a form versus repeat site visitors who go to this page who submit a form. Like you can get down to that level of understanding like what pages are making you money. And that's what businesses want to see. And if we can make even a few of these customizations in GA4 for people, we have more than earned our keep, because this is really, really valuable intel that helps people make more strategic decisions and that justifies the value of our work, right? For us to be able to say like, look at this, 6 out of your top 10 form submission friendly pages are SEO blogs that Hire a Writer has made for you. That's a beautiful story, right? We want to be able to tell that story. And obviously we hope that story is true. There are lots of different visualizations. If you need to know the best kind of visualization for a certain kind of data, talk to Megan V, not me, because she knows more than I do. But you can definitely look at it on a few different planes. Playing with data, like when I learned how to use Looker Studio, taught me more about data than anything. Playing with data visualization taught me more about data than anything. I'm not a good spreadsheet reader, or I didn't used to be. I've gotten better, but like I am okay at like visuals, like, and certain versions of it give me an aha moment of like, okay, that makes sense now. Like I didn't get that before, why that mattered. Now I understand. Or when I lay it over this, now I understand why those two things matter. And a lot of clients are the same way. Like people would much rather see a picture than a giant spreadsheet. So if we can at any time create that for them, it's a kindness, because then they can kind of, you know, gain some clarity around what they're looking at and why. All right. So how I got there, let's just recap really quick. So I was in reports and I was in, no, I wasn't. Hold on. Was I in the report snapshot? I didn't even get to reports, but okay, I got to pick it up. I was in the homepage. I went to one of the defaults, which is views by page title. I clicked into views by page title. I looked at the data here. I clicked into customize report. And then you can edit comparisons. Okay. So that's how I got there. So you can go through and do all those things. Okay. Any questions about kind of the general, like what to play with? What the freaking heck? I'm saying yes. It's gonna make me lose my mind. Okay, there it goes. Any questions about that level, like doing that kind of customization? Okay. The other thing that I wanted to talk to you about a little bit was data streams. So a lot of, you know, almost invariably we've relied on web-based data streams. Okay. Some of our clients now have different programs they're using. You know, we encountered this where a client, what was that, Sanders, that Red Bear was using? It was like some kind of, it was like a customer survey app. It was something like that. It was like a customer survey app or something that they wanted to integrate. Point being, you can set up data streams that pull in data from more than just the website. Okay. You can set it, you can pull in things from apps, you can pull in things from properties, and all of that. So there's a way to get more data into Google Analytics 4 than just the original like root domain digital property, which is nice because used to when we tried to do that in Universal Analytics, we had to set up multiple accounts for it. So that's kind of a nice way to do it. I'm going to let you look at all this. Okay. This is the other thing, the enhanced measurement that we have in Google Analytics 4 is something that you're going to want to look at as an SEO person or as a marketer. So when you're in Google Analytics 4 and you go into events measurement and parameters, so things like this. Okay. A lot of clients ask us, why are there outbound links in blogs? Are those outbound links hurting my traffic? Are those outbound links hurting my conversion? Now in Google Analytics, we can say whether or not it is, right? It could be, which would be a good thing to measure, because if it is, you've got to, you know, maybe watch what you're doing a little bit. So that's just one of those areas that we, you know, kind of want to be paying attention to. It's also important to note that cross-domain measurement isn't going to count as an outbound click. So for instance, a lot of our clients in the accounting space, right? They've got like a subdomain for something, right? Where it's like, they've got a wealth management practice that's subdomained or maybe even on a different domain. If they've linked all those Google properties, that's not going to count as an outbound link. They're not going to be losing traffic to their own other digital property. They can set it up in a way that, yeah, that does that. Another thing that I wanted to point out in this, and this is the last one I'll point out in this, is the site search. So you can do view search results, which is a very interesting. Why would we care if somebody's doing a search on our website?
I like to see when people are doing searches on our sites, just because that tells me, like, if they landed on our particular page and then they have to still go search for something, that kind of tells me that they haven't found what they thought they found. And it's kind of a saving grace, because then it's not like a quick back, or it's not like a bounce rate that's going to hit, but well, I guess it will, but
we don't care.
It just means that they're willing to stick around. What was that?
We don't care anymore about bounce rate.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. You want to know that people are willing to investigate. You also want to know that maybe your website doesn't contain something that is going to help people find answers, right? So it's not easy to find, or there are navigation issues. So it's a huge diagnostic kind of criteria. You can see file downloads. You know, most of us, our CMS show us some of these things anyway, so it's not like so revolutionary. But you know, it is what it is. Okay. In addition to events, lifecycle is something that Google Analytics 4 tracks. So the lifecycle reporting section is part of your business objectives. So if you remember when I briefly mentioned this, this may be something that not all of you see, because apparently the way that you import universal analytics settings may or may not show this. If you don't see it, you can go into library and add it. So the business objectives report is part of the report, is part of like the report library. Okay, so you can go into all of these, and if you want them to show up on the side here, you just click into it. Well, I guess I already have business objectives, so that would be a subsection. Hold on. You check that it's set up how you want. Okay, and then you save it if you want, and you can do this custom too. And then you go into these little dots here, and you can set it in the report snapshot. Okay, so you can pull that report, be it custom or be it from the library, into your report snapshot so that you see it every time. Okay, so how I got here, I'm in reports, I'm in the report library, I'm in all of this list of reports. I can create new ones, or I can use from the library list. I click on this and I can add it to my report snapshot. Okay, just FYI, it's like once you've seen it, then you'll remember how to do it. Okay, what were we doing? Life cycle. So if you go into in business objectives, you can set some life cycle reportings. I have not actually found these to be very useful. They basically collect data from other sections of GA4. So I'm not totally sure it's like the most useful thing in the world, but clients may like it, and they may want to look at basically an aggregate of these topics. Okay, so if you look at what we've got in front of us, it's acquisition. So obviously we're going to look at user and traffic acquisition, because those are things we almost always look at. Engagement, monetization. So that's where it gets a little tricky. Like if you're not monetizing on your website, it may not be worth it. And then retention, which is actually important, right? Like you want to know the fall off rate of people on your website. So it is in the library, and you should be able to just publish the life cycle. So it's right here if you see it. Mine is unpublished because it is, and I don't care. But you can publish. Maybe I'll show you how to publish it really quick. So you go here, publish. And it's loading. And then you see it show up. See? Okay. So basically, this is going to have a lot of data that we already, again, are pretty familiar with Google Analytics 4, meaning where do users come from? Okay, where do we get them from? Same as always, you can go in here, you can customize this, make it look like how you want it, do different data visualization. You can go into traffic. Okay, this is going to be key because, again, the conversation of how many people came in from organic and then did something that we care about. You can centralize that data here. So you could go in and you could customize this board, and you could customize this report specifically, this summary card here, right? I could go edit this summary card and figure out what other either different visualization or different filters. So if I wanted to add a new filter that was a custom dimension, so I would go and set up a custom dimension that says got to the business blog, or filled out a form, or got to the SEO blog, like whatever dimension I would want to measure against traffic acquisition, I could set up in custom dimensions, and then I would just go build the filter into this. And then it would basically show me, okay, this many people came in from organic search. Of the people who came in through organic search, this many went to the business blog, this many went to the SEO blog, things like that. Okay. So you can go in and customize any of those cards to just visualize, but you have to make sure you set up, which is why we started in the back end showing you how to set that up. Okay. All right. So that's user acquisition, traffic acquisition. Those are two things, obviously, that you're going to look at a lot. And then in engagements is where you see events. So if you remember, we pretty much just had these default events, but if I go in and I've set up in Google Tag Manager real data, I've synced it, or I've set it up in GA4 itself and synced it, and I say, I am very curious to know how many people scroll through our business blog, or how many people fill out a form after going to our business blog, those kind of things. This is where I would set it all up. So I've already got, the engagement for scroll time, form start, form submit, and then I've already got these metrics here. So I would just go go into customize, and then I can either change the event count, or I could create a new card. And in the new card, I can pretty much add whatever I want. So I could have the event be business blog views, if I had set that up, right? And have the metric be like event count, how many times did that happen? And then I could have the filter be form fill. Does that make sense? I know that's 3 dimensions of data. So I would set it up to say they went to the business blog, they viewed 2 pages, or they scrolled, or whatever I want the second dimension to be, they filled out a form. And then I would get percentage rates for each of those. And I would know how many times or what the percentage is of that journey. Okay. So that's part of the kind of power of, you know, some of those enhanced engagement reports, and you can use that in the lifecycle setting. I already talked to you about customizations because that's something that we've had to do a bunch. The reporting attribution is just a setup thing. We kind of already looked at event tracking. And then this, I just wanted to quickly make a note about. So acquisition and attributes analysis. So like we just went through, user acquisition and traffic acquisition are probably the 2 realms in which you're most familiar for Google Analytics, right? Those are the things you probably looked at the most. I wanted to mention that users is the unique website viewers. Sessions is the total number of website visits. Those are very important definitions to know the difference of, because when you're looking at this data, you're going to see a huge mismatch in numbers, kind of like Ross was saying, the difference between, I can't remember what it was, users and page views or something like that. And maybe it was users versus sessions. Did you literally ask that question?
I think it was event count.
Okay, thank you. Event count. So sessions is, so both of these are people getting onto the site. The question is how many times, right? So if you have the same person who gets onto the site 100 times, that skews your data. Who can instantly tell me why sessions data is almost always going to be a little suspicious? What kind of creature can get on a website 1,000 times a second?
A bot?
A bot, right? So if you have a website where you're always going to have a mismatch. Hopefully you want a mismatch. You want people coming to the website multiple times. That's a good thing. But if it is dramatic, that is a very important symptom for you to pay attention to. Because if there is a huge disparity in that, you could very well have bot traffic. There's also a huge, like, companies don't think about masking internal IPs, which feels like, psh, but they don't. And so that means all their staff, they'll have like an employee portal on their website. Okay. All their staff are going to it every single day to log in to get onto their virtual desktop from home. And they're like, man, our website traffic has tripled. And then 2 months later, when a developer when their IT department goes through and masks all their IP addresses, they're like, danger, alert, panic, our website traffic has fallen, you know, and you're like, okay. This is like, you got to know the bigger picture. You got to know the symptoms to look for. You got to know the questions to ask. I'm always that's one of the first questions I ever ask if I go to a new website and I see a button that says login. I want to know about that. What is that? What does that mean? Who's going to that? Because you're immediately going to have skewed data in your traffic. That was a totally random aside, but I think it is important to know. Okay. I'm going to pause there because this was quite a monologue, and I apologize that it couldn't really be more hands-on, because this is, again, very similar to last week, where it's like, I just want you to see it once. Now that you've seen it once, you can play with it, you can work with it, you can, you know, kind of get in there and move things around and explore how you like to see things. Any questions or anything that I missed as far as some of the advanced capabilities of GA4? Was this fire hosey? I got really intense feedback on this. It was an hour and a half of this, and I talked like pretty much the whole time.
It was super helpful though. I
Okay.
find it very helpful because I am in GA4 like frequently, but yeah. But to be able to see somebody else do it is kind of cool. So it gives me like, oh yeah, okay, go back to that spot. Oh yeah, go back over here, and yeah, it's very helpful.
Good. Are there any questions? Because I can show you landing pages really quick. All right, then we'll end with this one. So the last piece of this is the last piece. There are many more pieces. You could spend your life. This could be your full-time job. But another component of this that you will probably want to consider hooking up. So, okay, what we talked about was figure out data, be it Google Tag Manager or Google Analytics, make sure the data streams are turned on, make sure your data retention is set up correctly. And then if you want to, go set up custom parameters. If you do all of those things, you can set up events that are based on not just global behavior, general behavior, but based on the behavior of somebody on your website. That is very specific to URL or forms, okay? So if you do all of those things right, and you kind of build that structure, then you can have the ability to go in and customize everything that you're seeing based on those data points that you want to track, okay? That's obviously like a very basic use of GA4, and it's honestly, it's like how most of us are probably going to end up using it effectively. The other thing is you can go in and set up, that landing page is, we have a landing page for that, but people don't stay on it very long. You can go in and track your landing pages. So one of the things I'll mention to you that I really like is wonderful is that I didn't have to set any of this up. This is just what our landing pages are in our sitemap. And so as soon as I hooked up my sitemap to Google Analytics 4 and I installed the code, it automatically pulled all of this up. So we know that in the past, however much time, this is kind of the general, I don't even know what that landing page is, frankly. That's a blog. Okay, that's, maybe I didn't do this right. Point being, if you're running a campaign for a client, so like if we're doing a lead gen campaign, Ross, for a Wine and River client, it would be really smart of us to go in here and add the landing pages for that campaign, because what we could also do then, if we didn't, if their CMS didn't have the capability, right? If you are in like HubSpot, you pretty much see it in HubSpot. You can go through and figure out, they came into this landing page, they filled out this form. Especially because on a landing page, the form is on it. But if you don't have it, like pretty much if you're on any other CMS, it would be advisable to go in here and figure out how you're going to measure success. And you could go in, do exactly what we've done now 3 times. You could have the URL of the landing page would be pulled in there from the sitemap. You could go into customization. You could have the dimension be landing page. You could have it be, let's see, conversions. Okay. So I could just set that up and say conversions by landing page. And then I could select a dimension. So if I wanted to say people who got to the landing page from an ad, people who got to the landing page from the blog, people who got to the landing page from a CTA on the website, people who, right? Like there are multiple ways that people could end up on a landing page if you're putting together a campaign. So you could go in and set those as custom parameters, and then you would be able to see directly in GA4 not only what the website or what the traffic was like, engagement time, things like that. You could go in and see exactly where somebody originated to get to that landing page, and then whether or not they filled out a form, like what percentage of them filled out the form. So that's a really tidy and simple way to report on a campaign, because then you can really honestly just show a client and say, okay, we had 400 visitors. This was our percentage of form fills to landing page visitors. This is the percentage that came from these 3 sources. So analysis, this was our best source to get to conversion, to get to a form fill, right? You would be able to reverse engineer and tell them that story. So then the next time you run a campaign, you focus appropriately, right? And you've got a little bit narrower focus, but a likelier conversion. So there's just little things like that that you can kind of go in and tweak without a ton of extra effort, especially if you just set it up. I mean, you're just setting it up like once or twice. And once you've set it up a few times, it becomes so familiar that you're just clocking away. So if you have Google Tag Manager really well built for a client, which we have a few clients who it's well built for, then you're just pulling that data over into events, tracking it, putting in a custom dimension, boom, like you have absolute visibility into how your website's performing. Okay. No questions?